I made a short that showcased my 3 favorite bosses in The Legend of Zelda, but what about the rest of them? Here is my comprehensive list of Zelda bosses. Alright, so let's start out here with Aquamentus. So Aquamentus is just kind of like your standard chill boss, like very easy to beat, which makes sense because it's the first dungeon. I put him in C tier. Next up we got Dodongo. I don't personally love fighting Dodongo, but I think that the mechanic of beating them bombs was really cool, especially given the time that this game came out. C as well. Next up we have Manhandla. I always liked this one, honestly. I really like that you can kill it with just one bomb. I think that that's really, really cool. I put him in B tier. Then we have Gleeok. I think Gleeok is an easy A. Definitely the best boss in the game. He's hard, which is really cool, and it's just really fun to try and fight Gleeok. Definitely made me feel pretty bad A as a kid. Then we have Digdogger. I'm not a fan of Digdogger. I don't know. I think that it's a pretty gimmicky boss fight. You just play the little flute and then you kill it, and that's all there really is to it. So I put that in D tier. And then we have Goma. Goma, I think, is pretty standard, pretty cool. I think it's interesting that you have to have a bow, which you have to like go and buy arrows for. It's kind of weird. I like it good enough. I like Goma. She's cool. Put her in C tier. Then we have Ganon. I think this Ganon fight is probably the lamest in the whole series, and I know that's just a product of the time that it came out, but still I put it in C tier. I don't think there's anything necessarily bad about the boss fight. I just don't think it's good. Alright, next up we got The Legend of Zelda 2. Starting out, we got Horsehead. Now, I think this is a pretty common theme for a lot of the bosses in The Legend of Zelda 2, but the combat was a huge step up from the first game. Some of the more basic bosses I think go in B tier, so I put Horsehead in B tier, along with Helmet Head. I put Helmet Head in B tier as well because they're basically the same fight. One's just a little more complicated, a little bit harder. And then we have Rebonak, which is the guy on the horse, right? I'm gonna put that in A. I think that it was really cool, a boss fight where you get to fight someone on horseback, and then it turns into a regular Dark Nut. I thought that was pretty cool. We have Karok. Didn't care much for the Karok fight, so I put him in D tier. Same thing with Guma. I just not really a fan. Put them in D tier. Didn't really like those fights very much. Then we have Barba. I think Barba's a pretty solid B tier. I thought it was always fun to fight like a little dragon. I don't love the platforming section, but I do like the concept of fighting a boss that keeps popping up from the lava. I thought that was really cool. Then we have Thunderbird. So Thunderbird is hard as balls, and I didn't have fun fighting it. It was just hard, so we're putting it in the hard as balls tier, and we're gonna go ahead and dump Dark Link in there too. Alright, now on to A Link to the Past. We got the Armos Knights. I could take them or leave them. I think they're pretty mid, so I put them in C tier. And then we got Lanmolus. I thought Lanmolus were also pretty mid. Put them in C tier. It's just like a standard boss fight. You just kind of go through the motions and fight them. And then after that, we got Moldorm. I really don't like Moldorm. And the reason I don't like Moldorm is because you can do tons of damage to Moldorm, but if you get knocked off the platform, which I did so many times on my first playthrough, you just have to climb back up and it restarts the boss fight. That's not fun or challenging. That's just annoying. So I put Moldorm in F tier. Not a fan. Next up, we got Aghanim. I think Aghanim's a pretty fun boss fight. I put him in A tier. I think that it can set the standard for what big boss fights are going to be like in the future. I had a really fun time fighting Aghanim. Then we have Helmasaur King. I thought Helmasaur King was really, really fun. It actually took me 3 tries to figure out exactly how to beat Helmasaur. I don't know if that's just because I'm dumb or what's up with that, but I put Helmasaur in A tier. I had a really fun time fighting the Helmasaur King. And then we got Argus. I thought Argus was pretty mid. I put him in C tier. And then we have Mothula. Mothula, same thing. Like, I just don't have any strong opinions towards this boss, so I put them in C tier as well. Then we have Blind. Now, I think that this is a really clever, cool boss fight where you're literally escorting the boss throughout the entire dungeon. I had a really fun time with that. It was a huge surprise when I got into that room. Easy A. Blind is a good boss boss fight. And then we have Cold Stare, pretty indifferent to Cold Stare, put him in C tier. And then we got Vitreous, same deal, pretty indifferent to Vitreous. It's just a boss, so I put them in C tier. Then we got Trinix. Now Trinix was a fun boss fight. I really liked Turtle Rock. I had a really fun time going through that dungeon. I think that might rub off on why I like Trinix a little bit more than the other bosses. I had a good time fighting Trinix. It was also cool to figure out how to use the magic correct. So I put Trinix in B tier. And then we have Ganon. This was the first good Ganon fight in the series. I had a really fun time fighting Ganon in A Link to the Past. I put him in A tier. And then you have the Dark Links, which are another boss fight, but it's for the Game Boy Advance only, and so I put them in the I haven't fought this one tier, because I have only beaten A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo. Next up, we got Link's Awakening. Starting off, we got Moldorm. This version of Moldorm is a lot more tolerable because I just didn't find myself falling down nearly as much, especially if you consider the HD remake. It's a lot better, but it's still just kind of a boss. So I put them in C tier. Same deal with Genie, just kind of felt like a boss. I thought the gimmick of picking up the jar was cool, but other than that, it was just pretty standard C tier. And then we have Slime Eyes. I don't know if this is just me, but I always found it just a little bit annoying to try and split them in half, but it was also kind of fun. I don't know, I kept trying to like split them down the middle, but apparently you're supposed to hit the eyes. I could just be stupid, but then you do split them down the middle. I put them in C tier. And then we got the Anglerfish, probably the easiest boss in the entire series. You just kind of go ham, spam it with the sword. Normally I would put bosses like that in a lower tier, but for some reason I'm just a huge fan of spamming my attack button as fast as I can. So I put them in C tier because it's super easy boss, but also a little fun. We got Slime Eel. I thought Slime Eel was really, really fun. I really liked using the hook shot to pull them out of the wall. I put them in B tier. Then we have Facade. Not a fan of Facade. I think that it's a pretty lame boss fight. You just walk around and you just wait for your bomb to explode, and that's it. Not a fan. D tier. And then we have the Evil Eagle. Thought the Evil Eagle was alright. I really like the whole jumping up and slashing it with Rock's Feather. I thought it was an alright boss fight. I put it in C tier. And then we have Hothead. I don't like Hothead just because it doesn't make any sense to me that the only way to damage Hothead is with the fire rod, but he's on fire. I don't get it. I put him in D tier. Now, the final boss of the game, Nightmare, I put in B tier. I thought the whole boss fight was really fun. I thought it's always cool to kind of see the old bosses come through. The reason I put it a little bit lower is because some of the phases of the final boss are just a little tedious, so B tier. And then we have the giant hard hat beetle, which is the boss of the color dungeon. I don't like the hard hat beetle just because when you hit it with your sword and you bounce back, it can heal from that. It's not like, oh no, I'm not doing a good enough job attacking it. It's just like, oh, I guess I didn't get there in time, so now I have to start that part over. D tier for me. Okay, now we got Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is full of great bosses. So we got Queen Goma. I thought Queen Goma was a C tier boss. I think it pretty much nailed being the first 3D boss, really taught players how to do that. But I just don't have strong emotions towards Queen Goma, so I put her in C tier. And then the same deal for King Dodongo and Baronade. I think that all three of these bosses are solid in their own right, but they're just kind of the standard for 3D bosses. There's nothing special about them. Next up, we got Phantom Ganon. I thought Phantom Ganon was an easy A tier. That boss fight was really, really fun. Great way to end a solid dungeon. I had a lot of fun with the Phantom Ganon boss fight. A tier. And then we have Volvagia. I thought Volvagia was C tier. I just don't like waiting in boss fights. I think that can be a little tedious. And so having these large times where boss can damage me, but I can't damage the boss while I'm just like running around. Not a bad boss fight, not a great one either. C tier. And then we got Morpha. I don't like Morpha. I think Morpha is a tedious boss because you just kind of hide and wait until the little thing comes up, and then you try and hit it with your hook shot, and sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's tedious. Not a fan of Morpha. That's a D tier for me. Now Bongo Bongo, on the other hand, oh man, I love the Bongo Bongo boss fight. It scared the ever-living crap out of me as a kid. I just love the whole concept. I think it's really cool that like you're bouncing on this drum that Bongo Bongo is playing the whole time. S tier for me. Twin Rova, I thought was good. I thought it was a really good boss fight, so I'll give it a B tier. And then we have Ganondorf. I think Ganondorf is an easy A tier. First time you see him in 3D. Actually, first time you see Ganondorf. And they did a good job with Ganondorf. I thought it was an easy A tier. Same deal with Ganon boss fight. That being said, I think the Ganondorf boss fight was a little bit better than the Ganon fight. I think the Ganon fight was more of like aesthetically pleasing. Like it was really cool to fight Ganon at the very end of the game. But as far as the boss fight is concerned, it wasn't very riveting gameplay. But the atmosphere makes up for it. So I think that one's also an A tier. Then to Majora's Mask. Now, Majora's Mask has polarizing boss fights. So let's start out with Aldua. Aldua is the most mid fight in the game. He's a C tier. He's just like a boss fight. I think that it's like a fun boss fight, but it's not a great boss fight either. So I gave him C tier. After Aldua, we got Got. Now, Got is just a masterclass on boss fights. It took super fun mechanic of rolling around as a Goron, and they just made a boss fight out of that, and I love it. The 3DS version, not as good. N64 version is definitely the way to fight this boss. Oh my goodness, great boss. S tier. Then you have Georg. I don't like Georg, and that's pretty much all I have to say about Georg. I think Georg's a D tier. Then we have Twin Mold. In the N64 version, would probably garner a C tier because it's just kind of like a boring boss. But I think that the 3DS version of Twin Mold is just so atrociously bad. I don't feel right putting it in a higher tier than F. It's pretty horrible. The first time I fought the boss, I had to look up how to fight the boss because I had the Giant's Mask on, I was beating the crap out of it, and I was like, this can't be right. I've done this like 5 times now, and Twin Mold would not die. So I look it up, and it's like, no, that's how you do it. It's just every time that Twin Mold burrows down, it resets their health, which is the same thing I hate about Moldorm in A Link to the Past. F tier. Don't like Twin Mold. Majora, I think all of the Majora fights just kind of land in A tier. I think that it's a really menacing fight. If you don't have the Fierce Deities mask, holy crap, it's a fight for your life. It's not an easy fight, and I had a really good time fighting it for the first time before I got the Fierce Deity mask, and Majora's Wrath is terrifying. I think everyone should experience fighting Majora without the Fierce Deity mask, but you should also experience fighting Majora with the Fierce Deity mask because it trivializes the boss fight. It's just like you blow through it, and I think that's fun in its own right. So I give Majora an A tier for sure. I'm gonna be real with you. The Oracle series, I played through the games 6 years ago. It's just been so long that I can't really even remember the boss fights. So I'm gonna put all of the Oracle series boss fights in the it's been way too long tier. Alright, then we got Four Swords. Now, I have played Four Swords relatively recently, but it was the single player version of it, and I think that switching between players when you're playing with just one person can be a little annoying when you're fighting these bosses, so I think they'd be a lot of fun with friends. So I put the Four Swords bosses in the I don't have friends tier. Alright, now Wind Waker. Friggin' knocked it out of the park with most of the bosses. First up, we got Goma. Goma is a B tier for sure. She is just really fun. I think swinging over Goma is a lot of fun. Just kind of like the first boss, so there's nothing crazy going on with it, but definitely a fun boss fight. And then we have Kale Demos. Kale Demos is the weakest boss in Wind Waker for sure. I do think it's really fun that they coded in that you can one-shot Kale Demos with the spring water from Forest Haven, so I think that that's really cool. But overall, it's just kind of like a normal boss fight, and no casual player is ever going to run into that, but not a bad boss fight in C tier. Then we have Godon. I love Godon. I think that Godon is one of the funnest bosses in the series. He's just fun. I think it's really fun that he'll just rain bombs on you. He's very similar to the Bongo Bongo fight, and they're both an S tier for me, so I think that might have something to do with it, but I really liked Godon. Next up, we got the Helmarok King. I really liked the Helmarok King. I think it's a really fun boss fight, especially since you see this enemy from the very beginning of the game. You know that you want to fight it, and then you get to. So I gave it an A tier. And then we have Jalhalla. I think Jalhalla is a pretty fun boss fight. I think that the part that is the least fun is shining the mirror shield at it, just because that can be a little tedious. But once you get that done and you can like pick up Jalhalla, throw him into the spikes, I think that was really fun, that you get to like just grapple with the boss. And then if you planned it right, you get to use the hurricane spin to just wipe out all of these pose. Super, super fun. If you do it right and you play well, you can 2-cycle Jalhalla, which I think is really cool. Jalhalla is great. Then we have Mulgara. I've never felt so cool in a Zelda game. In freaking Wind Waker, the most cartoony Zelda game, you just take on this monolith of a creature that's just enormous, flying around, terrifying, and you just beat the crap out of it. I love Mulgara, and it has a 10 out of 10 soundtrack going on in the background. Easy S tier for me. And then we have Puppet Ganon, or I guess we have Phantom Ganon. So Phantom Ganon, I think is more of a mid-boss, but I'd feel bad if I didn't throw him in here. I think he's an A tier. It's a throwback to the original Ganondorf fight in Ocarina of Time. I thought that was cool, but it adds just enough to be fun. And then you can pick up and play with Phantom Ganon's sword, which I think is really fun. And then we have Puppet Ganon. I'm not the biggest fan of Puppet Ganon. I think that it was just kind of meh for me. I've never been a huge fan of the snake part. I feel like that's just annoying because you're trying to hit the tail. I think the first 2 parts of the Puppet Ganon fight are pretty fun, but the snake part just kind of drags it down to C tier for me. And then we have the actual Ganondorf fight from Wind Waker. Now, I love this fight. I think this might be the best Ganondorf fight in the series. I don't know. Tears of the Kingdom is pretty good, but I thought it was really fun to fight Ganondorf in Wind Waker because he's the only hard boss in the game, in my opinion. It's just like up to this point, you're just like fighting all these bosses and Link's just kind of single-handedly whooping them. They're fun, but they're not difficult. And then you show up to the Ganondorf fight and he just beats the ever-living crap out of this 12-year-old. I think it's great. 10 out of 10. Easy S tier. Now we're on to Four Swords Adventures. This one, same deal as the original Four Swords. We're putting that in the I don't have friends tier. Then we got the Minish Cap. So Minish Cap, we start off with the big green choo-choo. I think the big green choo-choo lands in C tier. I think that it was a fun boss, but pretty standard. Nothing crazy about it. And then we have Lee Rock. Now, Lee Rock, I put in the B tier just because I had no idea what its name was until I started prepping for this video. The pun just made me giggle. I think that it's a solid enough boss fight. Even a little challenging, the name did it for me. I put it in B tier. Then we got Mazal. Mazal, very similar to Godon, but in the 2D version of Zelda. And I just don't think it translates as well, but it wasn't a bad boss fight. I put it in C tier. Then we have Big Octorok, also C tier. Don't feel like I need to elaborate on that. And then you have Georg pair. Now, this one is confusing to me because Georg is a boss fight in Majora's Mask, and that Georg and this Georg are not even close to the same thing. So it's very confusing to me. I don't know how to feel about that. Regardless, I put Georg pair in A tier. I thought it was really fun boss fight. And then you have Vadi. I'm just gonna lump together the whole fight. I thought it was an A tier. I think that it's really fun to go through everything. I do think that the timed portion at the beginning is a little unforgiving, but it's definitely possible. You can definitely lose just because you didn't do it quick enough, which is the only thing dragging it down from S tier for me. All right, now we're on to Twilight Princess. So Twilight Princess, we're gonna start out with Diababa. So Diababa, that's a C tier, standard first boss of the game. Same thing with Phyrus and Morpheal. I have no strong emotions towards these boss fights. I don't think they're bad, but I don't think they're good either. So they're just landed in C tier. After that, we get one of the best boss fights in the series. We get freaking Stowlord. Stowlord is so much fun, and it comes in 2 parts. It uses the raddest item in the game, which is just a top that you spin on, and you just beat the crap out of this enormous skeleton. It makes you feel real cool. Love Stowlord. Star-Lord is an S tier for me. Then we have Blizzetta. Now, Blizzetta, I think is good. I think she's definitely better than the bosses I put in C tier. So I put her in B tier, but I don't think she's special enough to go into any tier higher. We have Armagoma. I thought Armagoma was fine. It's a C tier. Then we have Argarok. I really like Argarok. I am just a huge fan of any chance I have to use the double claw shots. I feel so cool. I really like the Argarok boss fight. A tier. Then we have Zant. I think Zant was a fine fight. It was pretty fun. Definitely better than the others in the game, so I put Zant in B tier. Then we have Possessed Zelda, also B tier. Same thing with Dark Beast Ganon in this game. I thought they were all fun in their own right, but I didn't think that they were as cool as some of the other final bosses, so I put them in B tier. But then you get to fight just straight up Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, and the atmosphere of that fight is just pretty bad A. So I put that in S tier. Then we have Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I haven't played these games, so I'm not even going to try and rank these bosses. So we'll just move on to Skyward Sword. So Skyward Sword, we got Girahim. I'm just going to let you know right now, I think that every version of Girahim is just a B tier. I don't think that the versions of Girahim change enough for me to be like, oh yeah, this one's like way better. I think the third one is the best. The third fight against Girahim is the best, but they're not that different, so they're all B tier. And then we have Scaldera. I thought Scaldera was a pretty meh boss fight. Not a fan. Put him in D tier. And then we have Moldark. I don't know, the giant scorpion, C tier. I have no vendetta against this boss fight, but I don't think that it's a particularly good boss fight either. And then we have the Imprisoned, Frick the Imprisoned, F tier, all the way down. I'm not gonna go into that. All right, then we have Koloktos. Koloktos was a godsend in the middle of the Skyward Sword playthrough. Skyward Sword is a good game, don't get me wrong. I definitely enjoyed Skyward Sword. But when you're comparing it to all the other Zelda games, it's just kind of like, alright. But then you fight freaking Koloktos and you forget all of the negative feelings you have about Skyward Sword. And it's just like, oh shoot, this is a cool as frick boss fight. And it's intimidating as heck. It has a cool gimmick. And I get to beat the crap out of it with its own weapon. It's just cool all the way through. Koloktos is an S tier for me. Then we have Tentalis. Tentalis is a D tier. It's not a good boss fight. Then we have Bylosite, the weird parasite that lives on Levias. It's whatever. It's a C tier. After Bylosite, the only boss fights after Bylosite are just more Girahim, more Imprisoned. It's embarrassing. But then you get to fight Demise. Demise is the coolest final boss in the series. I'm just gonna say it. It is a real challenge to fight Demise. He's hard as balls. You suddenly have to master something that was barely used in the game, which is shield parrying. It feels like an actual duel. I think it's awesome. And then it has probably the coolest ending shot of any Zelda game. Like, it was thematic, it was breathtakingly beautiful, the actual combat was super fun. I think Demise is an S tier for sure. Alright, now we're on to A Link Between Worlds. Yuga, I'm just gonna be real, Yuga's a B tier. Good, not great. Then we have Margomil. Margomil is just a C tier, nothing crazy. Or I mean, Margomil's a B tier. Fun boss fight, nothing to really complain about, but it's not super cool either. And then we have Moldorm. This version of Moldorm was fine, C tier. And then we have Argus. Now Argus is a C tier. Then we have Darkstare. I thought Darkstare was fun. Ice Physics, not the best, but still pretty fun, B tier. And then we have the Gemasaur King. I thought Gemasaur King was a really fun play on the Helmasaur King. It just was in a newer model. I do prefer the original Helmasaur King fight to Gemasaur, so I put him in B tier. And then we have Grinix. Grinix is a C tier. Same deal with the Knuckle Master. Knuckle Master is C tier. It was really cool to fight a boss version of Wall Masters. These creepy little man things that have terrified me for my whole life. I thought that was really fun, but still C tier. And then we have Stowblind. Stowblind is an S tier boss fight. Everything about it is super fun. It makes really good use of the wall merging mechanic. It's just fun. Then we have Zaganaga. Zaganaga. Zaganaga is a C tier. And we have Ganon. I guess it's technically Yuga Ganon, but I think Ganon is way funnier. That's an A tier fight. I had a really fun time with it. I think that it took the spirit of the Ganon fight in A Link to the Past and just ran with it. Did a really good job. And then we move on to Triforce Heroes. I'm also going to put this one in the I don't have friends tier. Now we've finally made it to Breath of the Wild bosses. So I'm going to be ranking the Divine Beasts fights along with all of the boss fights. To start out, we got Varuda. I thought Varuda was a really fun fight. I think that was a B tier for sure. And then you go in and you fight Water Blight. Water Blight is fine. There's nothing wrong with Water Blight, but it's just kind of like a generic bad guy. So I put Water Blight in C tier. Then we have Varadunia. Frick Varadunia. Terrible. Go burn in Death Mountain. Varadunia is freaking F tier. Hate the lead up to that Divine Beast. Then we have Fireblight Ganon. Fireblight Ganon is C tier. There's nothing special about Fireblight. And then we'll go ahead and do Master Koga real quick. I thought Master Koga was a B tier. I thought it was a fun boss fight, but you start comparing it to the other bosses in the Zelda series, it doesn't hold up quite as well, but it's still a fun boss fight. So I gave it B tier. Vondaboris had a great time leading up to that Divine Beast. I put Vondaboris in A tier. I thought it was really cool to do the shield surfing. You have to try and stay close to Riju to be protected from the lightning. And then who doesn't like shooting bomb arrows? It was just a really good time. And then Thunderblight Ganon, I think, is also A tier. It was hard as frick the first time I ever fought Thunderblight Ganon, and I point blank refused to look up anything about how to beat this boss. So I was just trying to figure it out on my own. Like, what can I parry? What can I flurry rush? How do I beat this boss? And it was so worth it when I finally beat him. It was really fun. Thunderblight's an A tier. Then we have Vomado. Super fun. I am a simp for mid-air boss fights. I think that it's so cool to just be a dude that's not supposed to be in the air, but you do it anyway. So you get to fight Vomado. I thought that was really, really fun. A tier for sure. Then you have Windblight, C tier. Not going to explain. Then you have Nadra, the secret boss. I thought the idea of Nadra could have been an A tier, but the execution of Nadra just kind of ended up being fly down while I'm around this boss and like dodge a couple of things. It could have been really cool, but it just wasn't that cool. So I gave it a C tier. And we have Calamity Ganon. I think Calamity Ganon's fine. He's a B tier. Not a great final boss, but not a bad boss. I gave him B tier. Pretty fun. And then we have Dark Beast Ganon. Dark Beast Ganon's F tier. Not going to explain. Then we have Monk Maz Koshi. S tier. S tier. All the way up. S tier. Monk Maz Koshi is fantastic. Very good boss fight. No complaints. Now we're on to the Tears of the Kingdom boss fights. I don't have them listed out in order, so I'm just going to go from worst to best with the Tears of the Kingdom boss fights. At the lowest tier that any of the bosses got was C tier. So I put the Mukta Rock in C tier, I put the Marbled Goma in C tier, and then I put the Sludge Like in C tier too. And then I'll go ahead and throw in the Hinox and the Talus there too. There's just not much to those boss fights. They felt pretty generic, pretty lame. Then moving up to B tier, we got the Battle Talus. I thought that was a really good way to shake up the Talus battle. And then we got the Frox, which I think is just a Talus fight, but cooler. And then it like mimics a bunch of the King Dodongo characteristics. I thought it was well handled. I put it up to a B tier. Then we have the Seized Construct. I thought that was a fun boss fight. I think it could have been more fun, but still wasn't bad. I think Moldugas are also B tier. And then up in A tier, we got the Flex Construct. Thought Flex Constructs were a really good idea for a boss fight. They make you use your brain. I thought it was really fun. A tier. Cleok, it's just a Dark Souls boss in a Legend of Zelda game. I thought it was really fun. I wet my pants the first time I found one. Super cool. Phantom Ganon, same deal. Just kind of fun to fight Phantom Ganon. His inclusion was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Queen Gibdo, also A tier. I had a fun time fighting Queen Gibdo. Master Koga in this version of the game I think was really fun, especially since he has the constructs that he makes and you get to fight against his machines. I thought that was really fun. So Master Koga is A. I also put the Demon Dragon in A tier because the Demon Dragon fight is everything that Dark Beast Ganon wanted to be. They just fixed all of it because you're not just sitting around waiting for something to open up. You're literally riding a dragon. You're skydiving down onto the back of a dragon. You just feel cool as frick the entire time you're fighting it. And like I said, I am a simp for mid-air boss fights. And then up in S tier, we got Colgera. I made a short about why Colgera is my favorite. I'm not gonna go into it anymore here. Moragia, that weird marble thing that comes out of Death Mountain, and then you fly around and shoot it with freaking Yanabu, with the Goron guy. It just, ooh, that's good crap. It was really fun, really creative. Came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it, so I had a really good time fighting that boss. Then you have Ganondorf from Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's the best Ganondorf fight, S tier. And here is a picture version of the tier list where everything ended up.